Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call to order the Monday, December 20th, 2021 noontime meeting of the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Committee on Arts and Nonprofits. This is our final scheduled meeting of 2021, and there has been interest expressed in continuing this group at the City Council level that I've heard. So we don't have a proposed schedule for 2022 yet, or an idea of how the continuation of the group would be populated or any of that. So we're just going to work through today as this being the last meeting of 2021, and we'll rely on the council to give the incoming council to give us direction on what's next and go from there. So we're going to postpone the approval of our December meeting minutes until hopefully we reconvene at some point in the future, because we do not have an in-person forum here, and the law requires us to have an in-person forum to do any official business, so that will not take place. I think the second thing on the item, just the summary of the future of this Blue Ribbon Committee, I mostly took care of just now. Barbara and I will be presenting to the City Council tonight our year-end report. We circulated that to everyone, so everyone's had a chance to review that at this point. And as you know, one of the recommendations we made was a continuation of this group as a Blue Ribbon Committee for 24 more months, the term of the incoming City Council, with the hope that we can see through the projects that are proposed in the year-end report tonight. I believe there were 6 different items that we had proposals on tonight, maybe 5 or 6 items that we have proposals on to the City Council. And it's likely that those will be taken up in January by the new City Council when they're seated. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns about the, how the future of this committee could go forward, or the proposal that we have on the table? Go ahead, Barbara.
Russ, maybe you can help us with this, because you were on the reopening task force a year ago.
Yes.
And maybe you can kind of let us know how it might work as far as people expressing an interest in continuing, or expressing thanks and gratitude for being a part of it, wanting to move on from it.
Of course. So you bring up an interesting topic, the reopening, because it was initially a reopening task force that was formed that I served on for 7 or 8 months to finish out 2020. And then at the beginning of 2021, it was transitioned to a Blue Ribbon Committee, which it had not been in the first year. And at that point, I stepped off of that committee and stepped onto this committee. I believe what happened in the case, and Nancy might know even better than I do, but I believe what happened in that case were the 2 chairs, the co-chairs of the reopening task force, agreed to stay on as co-chairs of, or maybe at that time it was just James. I can't remember if it was James and Mark. That I think James and Mark both stayed on. Unfortunately, Mark had passed away after that, but James stayed on definitely as the Blue Ribbon Committee chair. And then they invited everyone who was currently sitting on the task force to continue on. And some people like myself opted to move on to different projects or step away from that particular committee. So they welcomed some new committee members to that group. And so that would likely be a similar process to what would happen here. Barbara and I would have to make a decision as to whether or not we wanted to remain on as co-chairs for at least the coming year, and then invite everyone who's sitting on the current committee to stay if they would like to stay, or let us know if they need to move on for whatever reason. And then if there are vacancies, we would need to find a path to filling those vacancies. And typically they're officially filled by the mayor. Correct, Nancy? Is there anything in that that could be said better?
No, you summarized that.
If one of the current members wants to move on, can they appoint somebody from their organization to take their seat, or does it go back to the mayor?
It goes back to the mayor, but I think they can recommend people to sit on the committee. I think there were recommendations made for the reopening Blue Ribbon Committee. Recommendations would be taken from anyone on the committee and anyone in the community, and people can recommend themselves for the committee. I think there's an application process that they can go through, like we went through when we applied for this committee. And then the mayor would review those. The mayor often, I don't know what the case will be with the incoming mayor, but the mayor will often ask leadership on the committee for input and advice on appointing new committee members, but the mayor has the ultimate decision. So, but I do like the idea that if someone currently on the committee were to step aside, the potential of bringing in a new committee member that was associated with either their organization or a non-represented arts organization with the community to come in and fill that slot. I think that the work that we're doing is so closely tied to the arts, culture, and historic preservation nonprofits in the community that would be good to have strong representation from those organizations. So yeah, nominations. It's not really a nomination, it's self-nomination.
I think that should be those recommendations of what the criteria should be for selecting somebody might be something this committee would put together, just
Okay.
because you know the nature of the work. I don't remember a formal application for the opening committee. I just thought that
Maybe
there were names and then he selected. Is that?
Yeah.
I think
There was an application, Nancy.
yeah,
for the Blue Ribbon Committee, for our group, there definitely was an
Yeah.
application
yeah.
for this group.
For this
Yeah,
one,
because
that's-
Russ and I
Right.
discussed some of the candidates with the mayor at the time. He wanted our input.
Yeah, and I think that's how, it's with the new mayor, who knows what the process will be, but I know that he will probably be very open to recommendations, but I think the nature of the work, the time that it consumes, and I think that that's the kind of thing that the mayor needs to know going forward.
Excellent. Does that answer your question, Ron?
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, before we go any further, because I'm gonna forget if I wait until the very end of the meeting, I want to take a moment here to just recognize and thank all of the committee members. I know Barbara feels the same as I do, that you've done really fabulous work over the past year. And because we're moving from this meeting into somewhat uncertain ground, not sure what's going to be happening in 2022, I don't want to miss the opportunity to thank all of you for your service, especially if some of you might not stay in the coming year, although I hope that all of you will stay. I think that it's been a really remarkable group. It's been an honor to work with all of you, and I really think that there's a lot that we could accomplish in the next 2 years under the city council coming in, if we're given the opportunity to do so. So thank you all for taking the time. I know it's not easy to take time away from your day pretty consistently. At first we met every week, then once a month, and we've been meeting twice a month for a while now. So it's a lot of time, and I hope that the community appreciates the dedication and volunteer service of everyone on this committee. Anything you
And
want
we
to add,
thank-
Barbara?
We
Oh, go
thank you
ahead,
for your
Renee.
leadership too. We thank you for your leadership.
It's appreciated.
I also want to thank Stephanie and Nancy. You've been so important for us in terms of getting the word out on the city site and communicating. Stephanie, thank you. And Nancy, I can't even begin to say thank you enough to you, because it goes far beyond this committee for me. You and I have known each other for much longer than probably we want to admit. And you've always been supportive and helpful and a wonderful sounding board, and help navigate some difficult waters at times. And I don't assume to speak for everyone. I think they'd like to say the same, but I will miss you so much. And I don't even, I have to stop or I'll get too emotional, but thank you. And thanks Stephanie too. Wow. I mean, boom, Stephanie, could you get this out? It's out. I mean, just
Yeah.
wonderful. So yes, Nancy, Stephanie, thank
I
you.
do have to say, working with the two of you has made this an enjoyable process, not just an easy process. So thank you for being here for us.
Those are really kind words, really appreciate it, but honestly, you're the people that make this city dynamic and interesting, and preserving what little artsy bohemian side we still have left here. And I really appreciate that, because that is, to me, what makes Portsmouth so compelling. And keep up, I'm not going away, keep up the good work. I'm here to help, I'm here to support and help, so.
Awesome, thank you. The next thing on our agenda is the direct support to local artists that we didn't have time to get to last week. And it seems like a really fitting segue into that, because we do as a committee recognize the integral role that the arts community, particularly the working artists within our community, play in making Portsmouth what it is and what it has been for decades. So Nico, if you want to hop on.
Great, thank you. So our subcommittee, so Courtney and Nancy had a chance to meet on Monday. We reviewed a draft proposal and feel like it's pretty much there. I'll go through it in just a second. Our next steps.
Sorry, Nico, can you get closer to the microphone?
I can try.
Thanks.
Yeah. How's that? Is that all right? Our next steps for the proposal are to get it to the city manager, get their feedback, and to present it to city council. We're aiming to have that by the end of February, early March. So we will put in front of them and make a presentation. So our proposal consists of a brief narrative draft, which I gave for us for it makes a case for the importance value that independent artists give to our creative economy. It cites the previous two AFTA surveys, which highlight that importance. It cites our internal survey that we conducted in March, and the results of that, which call for the right financial aid for artists. That outlines our pilot. Our budget has not changed. It is still a total of $16,500, which encapsulates 10 individual grants at $1,500 a piece, and a budget for administrative expenses, $1,500. Explicitly within our pilot, we decided that it's not necessary to put together a complete, fully fleshed out grant application. So that's a great practice for me on what that might look like and some language that might include. But key points include having an explicit call for diversity in artists, in their medium, and as well as personal identity representation. We want to have that language clearly laid out in the grant application, and we also want to have a diverse selection. We decided that it's important to not limit applicants to by a residential environment in the city of Portsmouth, rather to have a radius-based residential environment, and to evaluate their work as it pertains to Portsmouth. So our plan here is to put out an open call, let artists tell us how the work that they've already done has impacted within Portsmouth specifically. So we hope that by drawing that line between impact and their physical residence, that we are being more inclusive of artists and still value to the city. And we want to reiterate that we're not trying to commission new projects. We are trying to let artists report on work that they have done in their personal practice and make a case for how that has presented some kind of public value to the community. And then the selection board will review that work that's already been done and make those selections based on the merit and impact of that work. I think that about covers it.
Any questions? I'll chime in real quickly and say that I really like the proposal. I'm really appreciative of it. Barbara and I had a conversation about last week about specific funding asks and the level of detail that we're able to go into at this point with the incoming city council on funding for these projects. And we kind of made a decision that at this early stage, the best path of action would be to make a request of a percentage of American Rescue Plan Act funds, as opposed to an itemized list of X dollars for this, X dollars for this, X dollars for that. We thought that an ask of 4% of the funds that were awarded to the city of Portsmouth to cover all of the projects that are and initiatives that we're proposing in this year-end report was a realistic ask. So, so in the report, when we talk about support for local artists, I think what we're talking about here, recognizing work that's already been done, is an important aspect of that. But we also included in the year-end report the potential for funding new community impact things. So that's really based on the language of the American Rescue Plan Act about what we can do to currently impact the community as the community comes out of the pandemic. So, you know, we feel that ARPA funds are a good match for this because you're talking about a disproportionately impacted population, working artists within our community, and that goes across throughout the world. Working artists were disproportionately impacted by this, but also an opportunity to create something that engages the community. So, you know, we've been a little bit more general in the year-end report. I think what's likely to happen is that with the new council, we'll have further conversations on what the possibilities of funding are, whether or not they want to pull out specific actions from the year-end report, or whether or not they want to give us an opportunity to have a decision-making process as a committee for the proposed items that we had, and we can prioritize them. So I'm not sure yet whether or not the council's going to want to prioritize what we're asking for, whether they're going to allow us to prioritize what we're asking for, and what's actually going to happen with the funding request. But while the $60,500 line in your proposal is great, we chose not to say this much for marketing, this much for AFTA study, this much for artists. We chose instead to say, these are all the proposals that we think 4% of the ARPA funds would allow us to accomplish most, if not all of this.
Can I just go back with a question, Nico, which
Go ahead.
everything sounds really great. I didn't know if you discussed or even have a way to address economic need. So is that part of your equation?
We actually did discuss that, and that was a note to include it in the draft. We do want to include it as a consideration, but not the primary consideration. We made the choice not to frame this as a relief program. We thought it would be more sustainable as a pilot. We thought it would be more likely to be adopted ongoing annual project if we frame it as kind of incentive to engage rather than something that is spurred specifically out of.
Any other questions, comments? Go ahead, Barbara.
Nico, who would be making these decisions about who would get this money?
Some combination of our subcommittee and this larger committee would put together a review panel that I would imagine would consist of artists and nonprofit leaders such as yourself.
I believe that the city has a, and Nancy might know better than I do, they have criteria for reviewing public art in the Percent for Art program. Is there like a determined way that panel is put together?
That was part of Art Speak.
Yeah.
They had that public art subcommittee, and they were tasked when they were in existence
Got it.
to pull together a review committee. But that was specific to public art. Think more three-dimensional, two-dimensional art as
Yeah.
opposed to performing art. And there's a whole series of guidelines that were adopted by Art Speak and have been put into practice by the city. I think just listening to what Nico just said about, you know, having representatives of this this committee you're gonna have to have, it's city money, so you're gonna have to have somebody from the city and some finance controls on how that works, so that probably has to be determined. After we get to the point of, hey, this is a great idea, now let's really drill down on it, because this is a mayor's blue ribbon committee, and it's not a part of a legislative regulating, it's not part of our city ordinance, if you will, in terms of a committee, so I think that has to be sorted out.
Okay.
But I think what made the Percent for Art successful is that, professionals were consulted about public art, art in the public realm, put it that way, and there was, the guidelines were very good in terms of quality control and those kinds of things. And, the Kathy Sununu did a lot of work on putting that together, and that is, in the absence of Art Speak, we've had a couple of proposals for public art, and we've gone back to those guidelines and pulled together an independent, small committee to review those specific requests or proposals for art. One is the painting related to the Peace Treaty when you walk in the hallway into this room, and another one was the sculpture that went into the North Mill Pond Park. So and because we don't have a formal committee other than this, I'm not sure how that would work, but we certainly lean on people that have expertise to, maybe not unlike what we do for performances at the Von Mall stage, pick James from the Music Hall, Russ and Joel Wixon, people that are performers and or that review performances and advise us, so something like that.
Makes sense. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, Nico. That's super appreciated, and we'll hopefully be moving forward with some of this stuff very soon. The next thing we have is a marketing update, and Jason informed me that Barbara and I that he wasn't going to be able to make it today, but Ben is here to give a quick update on that.
Yeah, it will be a brief update. Couple of things that has been decided, I think we discussed this at the last meeting, that potentially moving the campaign start until March. That was agreed upon by the marketing subcommittee and was certainly supported by the team at Darcy Creative. So that'll be starting in March, which is great because we can refocus the campaign to be more of a spring messaging and will allow us to capture some of the momentum for Prescott Park and other seasonal events, things of that nature. So we're excited about that. In the short term, well before March, we want to start on the public relations side of this, and we have our PR firm out of Boston that is anxious to get to work. The challenge for them is they need to become educated and really learn the ins and outs of the arts community. So when they're talking to writers and editors and things of that nature, they can speak intelligently and plant story ideas. So what we'd like to do with the help of this group is to, over the first few weeks or first through January, have a series of meetings with different segments of the arts community. Because when you start breaking, you guys all know this, when you start breaking arts down, there's several large chunks there. There's a lot to talk about. So we've kind of split that up into a couple different subgroups, and we'll put some Zoom meetings together to talk about those different areas. So performing arts or venues or galleries, we'll somehow, and it won't be perfect, but we'll somehow develop some buckets where we can have some Zoom meetings and talk about those subsets of the arts community so that our public relations teams can become more informed and start their work to reach out. Because ideally, we would bring writers to town in February and early March so that we can have some of these articles hit throughout the March, April, May timing of the campaign. There's always a couple week lag time after a writer visits before anything hits the shelves or the papers. So we will be working on that. And at the same time, in the next short term, perhaps in conjunction with these meetings, we're gonna be asking for any visual assets that can be loaned to the team at Darcy Creative. So if there's, a great video of shows at different venues or photography of artists at work that can be borrowed and used by Darcy Creative to put together these marketing pieces, that would be much more cost effective than us having to hire photographers and videographers. Those come with a pretty high price tag, we all know. And it'll just be a faster and a little bit more streamlined way of putting this together. So we'll be making those requests in those same meetings. So we will work with hopefully Barbara and Russ to potentially put together the meeting schedule and share it, and then it'll be really need help from this group to get that word out. As the chamber, we have certainly great contact information for our membership, but outside of that, it gets tough. So as we're trying to reach individual artists, for example, that's going to be a hard group for us to capture. So we will certainly need help from this group to get the message out about those opportunities so that we can really educate our PR firm and get as many people engaged in this as possible. Any questions for me? Yeah.
I guess you touched on it already, but I'm curious to learn more about how artists or organizations that aren't directly represented in this group might reach writers. They're putting together marketing materials so that they can make sure that their practice has a chance to be reflected in how the city.
Yeah, so it's it took a bit of doing, but we have we're starting to get our hands around how all that can be. And that's what these meetings will really be all about, is informing these subgroups of the arts community about what the plan is, how they can be involved. We've found ways to include them on our website without putting them into our membership. So we had to do some technical wizardry by other people to make stuff like that happen. But we've worked through some of those. So through these meetings, we will be, putting people onto the artist pages of the website. We will be asking them for information about their art and their what it is they do, and that's different for every art medium, so that our PR firm can go out and speak intelligently to prospective writers. And the way that works is, they'll go out and kind of pitch editors and writers about coming into Portsmouth and experiencing all that is great about Portsmouth, including focus on our arts. And then once the writer says, oh, I think I can make it these days, let's put something together. Then our PR agency with our staff, the chamber staff, will arrange everything for them. So we will reach out to certainly find them a place to stay, make sure they have great meals and go to great restaurants. And then depending on their interests and maybe the type of publication or whatever their, whatever makes sense, we will reach out to the artist community to say, okay, who'd be willing to, host this person in their studio, or if they were interested in performance, who has an event going on this weekend that we could, maybe get them tickets to a show or whatever it is. It's going to be different depending on each circumstance. And so we cast a pretty wide net with that. And the way it works is everyone responds back to us and say, yeah, I have this show going on, or, whatever have you, whatever, here's all the options. And then we sit down with the PR firm and kind of pick and choose what we think the best experiences will be. So if there's two shows going on and they only have time to go to one, we're going to have to make a call. Well, we think, this would probably fit them better, or they might enjoy this better based on their interests. So it's a bit of we craft the right experience for them as best we can.
Any other questions, comments? I just want to make sure that all the consideration goes into supporting the arts, culture, and historic preservation in the community outside of performance too, not just purely basic performance. So, the artists that are showing in galleries or the Button Factory, schools, different things that are happening in the community, in the arts community. So making sure that all of it's represented somehow.
Yeah, certainly. The challenge will be that's a pretty broad thing, like once we, there's a lot of stuff going on there. So for us to cast as wide a net as possible and learn as much as we can, That's what these meetings are all about. So the more we know and the more we get these story ideas, the better off we can go out and pitch them to editors and writers and get the right people to come to town. And it looks like Stephanie has a.
Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, I just wanted, I'll turn on my camera.
Stephanie knows far more about this than I do, so.
Well, I was just going to comment that on both ends of the spectrum of what you've just described, both you and Ben and Russ, having worked with the chamber and particularly with Martha Sullivan, their PR people, their brilliant PR person at Strawberry Bank, Martha knows Portsmouth pretty well. She knows the high spots, the kind of the usual suspects, and she knows the Diagon Alley kinds of aspects as well. So I wanted to say that this isn't somebody new to the whole destination and what we are and what we do. But on the other hand, for those of us who have been working on national level PR for our respective organizations, Martha knows who our PR people are. When I was at Strawberry Bank, she knew that if there was a Strawberry Bank angle or a history angle, she would talk to me. And it's not, I haven't ever found it to be a duplication of effort. I've found her always to be supportive of what I was doing with national media on behalf of Strawberry Bank when I was there. So I think it works really well. The fact that it's Martha is terrific. So I just wanted to say that to allay the concerns of people who have their own PR folks saying, wait a minute, I'm already doing that. Martha works really well on that.
Right, and if I could just make one more comment, it's the level of detail involved in this is pretty significant. You know, and I'll just use 3S because I happened to visit Beth over there the other day. You know, it's one thing to know that 3S has a gallery, right? We all know 3S has a gallery, but the exhibit right now, you know, is perfect to you know, publications that have a DIJ you know, angle to them and a diversity angle to them. So to know that the next artist that's going to be featured in that gallery has this going, you know, in their background, really allows them to fine tune the pitch and the ask to the right publications and the right writers. So it's getting down to that really kind of, you know, next level deep of information so that she can be informed and really make a strong case for the right writer to come and have the right experience, which creates the right article or publication.
Excellent. Any other questions for Ben or comments? All right, thank you, Ben. Super helpful. The last thing we have on our agenda before public comment is the AFTA Arts and Economic Prosperity Study. I don't know if there's any updates there.
Yeah, there is.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
You want me to take that, Renee? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so first of all, we did send out to this committee the definition of what a participating organization is and ask you to look at the spreadsheet and correct or add. And so for those who have done that, thank you. For those who haven't, there's still time to do that. Renee and Lauren, Rosen and I are meeting tomorrow to finish a kind of draft, an email that's going to go to all of the nonprofit organizations and others. It's going to, as succinctly as possible, describe what the AFTA plan is and what our schedule is. And then we're going to invite people to come to a question and answer Zoom meeting for those who think they need to. There's people who've done this a dozen times, they don't need to. But we'll be saying we're going to have a Q&A Zoom meeting for you, board, volunteers, or anyone. We're looking at January 26th for that date. I will ask Stephanie to check on that to see if we can have a Zoom link through the city. And the other thing I wanted to ask this group really quickly, for something like that, I don't remember what day of the week it is. It may be Wednesday. Is there a specific time that's good for something like that? In the morning, at lunch, end of day? I find that end of day, people are too busy, but does anybody have any advice?
I mean, for me, mid-morning always works best, but I might be unique in this crowd.
I like mid-morning.
Mid-morning? Okay.
Yeah, same
And,
here, mid-morning.
and that would, again, that would be, we're going to try to let everybody know, what's going on so they can read it, and it would be a Q&A session. Then we're gonna have 2 actual orientation trainings for the how to participate. We have to wait until we get our stuff from National, but we were hoping to have a February 23rd in person, probably at the library, and a 24th repeat of all of that repeat of that by Zoom. So people who didn't want or couldn't come in person on the 23rd, hopefully could come on the 24th. And that would be more of a training on how to do the audience intercept survey. And by then we might know a little bit more about the financial information that each organization will have to go online and submit for AFTA. So that's the track we are on. And we do have to wait to get new dates and stuff from them. Renee, anything else?
Nope, you covered it all. That's great.
Well, thank you, both of you, for your work on this. It's super appreciated. Any questions or comments for them?
I just have a comment, and it relates back to the recommendations to the city council. The first one is direct support for National for the Arts upcoming AFTA, or Art to Prosperity study, funding to implement the study in 2022. I don't know if what you meant by that is the actual survey fee, because we've already
It's already been paid, yep.
paid that. We've already paid the speaker fee to
Yep.
come. And we have recently just received approval for budgeting the expenses, the travel expenses, which are low budget, but hopefully we can maybe work with Ben and he can help us, get a discount to put up the executive
It's one
director. Out for one night, just one night. So it's flight and putting him up and meals. And then the other piece is I just need to get the city manager's signatures today. I just got all the paperwork from the city attorney's office for to hire a project manager for 200 hours. So so just when you give the report tonight,
Yep.
these things are teed up already.
Yeah, Barbara, I think
Yeah.
this is your part of the presentation tonight. Is that correct?
I think it is, yes. And Russ and I talked about this, Nancy, that it was already in the works. So I don't know if you want us to discuss it tonight or just leave it.
Can I jump in real quick? I don't know, Nancy, you have an opinion too. There are other expenses involved.
Yeah.
They're gonna be minimal in a sense, but there will be other administrative things. There's gonna be a brochure that we're gonna wanna produce eventually. There may even be something we wanna get right now, like a button that you wear to say, that identifies you as somebody doing with permission to do the surveys, which we did a number of years ago. So those are gonna be small, but they're definitely,
Yeah.
even refreshments at an in-person
I
meeting.
think the strategy for tonight was for Barbara to acknowledge the fact that a lot of this has already been funded by the city and that what we're seeking to do is see it through to the end of the project. I think that's
Perfect.
yeah.
And we can't thank Nancy enough.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I had to turn over a lot of stones to squeak out some money, but I'm really psyched that we have someone to carry this forward, because our co-chairs for this committee have lots of other things on their plate, so this is great.
Other comments or questions on this? If you've had a chance to look at the report that's gone through tonight, we used a lot of the data from the last AFTA survey to set up everything in the year-end report. And this does feel like the easiest of the asks to the city, because it's been something the city has consistently participated in for the past 20 years and probably 20 plus years. So it would be a shame to not continue it at this point. And obviously the funding's already there for it all to happen. So it's the most minimal of the asks that are on there. But we do right up front acknowledge the funding that was transferred from Art Speak for the pilot of the marketing program with the Chamber of Darcy Creative and the funding that's been provided for the AFTA study. And we are clear as part of our report that these are things that are already underway and accomplished as a part of this. So, yeah.
Russ, can I ask one more favor?
Sure.
If we can fit it in the email, we don't want the email to be a book. But Tina, from a representative from a large organization, could you shoot Renee or I a one sentence why AFTA is important to you, to your
Sure.
organization? And Barb, as a smaller organization, if you have a moment, could you shoot a 1 or 2 sentence, why AFTA is important? And again, we'll try to fit that in that email with our bullets.
That's great.
Thanks.
Hey, Robin, I was going to ask you, do you have a location determined for the meeting on the 26th?
The meeting on the 26th is Zoom.
Oh, it's Zoom. Okay, gotcha.
That's why I was asking Stephanie if she could look up that date and provide a city, then we could have a city link and a city someplace to send them.
Great. If ever in-person stuff is needed, we're happy to see if it can work on our calendar down the road. So
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions?
So Robin, do you want to massage an actual time or set it right now so I can put the wheels in motion?
Let's set it right now, and I'm thinking mid-morning to me means 10.
Sounds good to me.
That's appropriate.
Okay,
Because then Stephanie, we could actually, obviously we're going to put it in the email. We're going to say, if you're
but
coming
that
to
way I can give you the Zoom link. And right now there isn't anything else on the calendar. The only thing for the 26th is a citywide neighborhood committee meeting at 6:30 that night. So
Thank you.
It's also my mother's birthday,
That's important.
but I can spare 10 a.m. for this and see mom later in the day. Any other questions or comments? Okay, excellent. I don't see anyone from the public here. So there's no one that's logged on Zoom or no one in the room. So we're not going to have public comment today. So go ahead, Nico.
I just had a question about the report that you're presenting tonight.
Yes, go ahead.
What are the next steps for that? Do you expect that the city council will vote on approving?
I cannot predict what the city council would do tonight, the current city council. So I don't really have an idea of what they would do. I think that the way that we're approaching it with the council is to provide the current council that has charged us with our mission with the information about what's happened over the past year, what our recommendations are for going forward, and with a request for this council to forward this information to the incoming council.
Got it.
So that's what our hope is, that we can forward this, and then when the incoming council comes in one of their first few meetings, we're hoping they'll be able to address this. I probably shouldn't assume anything, but my guess would be that the first thing that they would want to address is the continuation of the Blue Ribbon Committee and how that would work. And then the next thing would be funding for projects for this particular committee. Because we're going to be very clear with them. What they've asked us to do is to provide ways that the city can support arts, culture, and historic preservation recovery from the pandemic. And from my conversations with the many professionals in this group, we're probably looking at another 4 years of recovery to get out of this mess that we're in. I've been thinking for a long time that it's likely a 5-year recovery, and we're just finishing the first year. So it's kind of going to be a long grind, and I think the next couple of years are going to be critical. Because a lot of the safety net that was there through the PPP loans, the SFOG grants, the NERF grants, all the different things that happened, were all pretty much 2020 and 2021. We're not planning on seeing much of that in 2022. So the risk and the danger for our arts organizations, our artists, is still there, and the concerns that our audiences have not gone away. So that's really the message, is that they've asked us to supply the city with ideas on how the city can help support the recovery. These are our ideas. So we're going to work onward from there. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions before we call it a year?
I I don't know that this is appropriate, but I thought it might make sense to just call attention to what happened at the Seacoast Rep this weekend.
Very
And
appropriate.
I'm not sure that everyone is aware, so Seacoast Rep was hosting a family-friendly drag show that they've done for a very long time called Honey Punch and Pals. And it was, I guess you could call it ticketed by probably between 15 and 20 neo-Nazis with signs equating drag to pedophilia and, you know, various other epithets being screamed at people as they walk past, as well as personally attacking the artist that is sort of the drag queen in the show. So it's, I think, challenging as a presenting organization that supports artists of all kinds to be presenting in a community and be confronted with something like that. But I think we should all be thinking about how we can, I think, demonstrate unity, but also think about moving forward what that looks like. And I don't have an answer to that, but I think having these conversations and awareness amongst all of the arts organizations and culture organizations in Portsmouth is important.
I agree. Stephanie, was your hand up for this?
No, it wasn't, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I was very disturbed by the video I saw from the group being in front of Seacoast Rep this weekend. And it was really disappointing to see. And I guess one of the nice things that I saw come of it was a lot of support for Seacoast Rep financially as a result of this. There were a lot of donations that came in over the past 48 hours. This is a specific result of what happened. I believe it was on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still very recent. It's not the first time we've seen something like this start to creep up into the community. There was something that happened on the Middle Road overpass a couple of weeks ago with some signage that the police came and took down shortly after, which I think was organized by the same group or a similar group. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more of this happening, although I'm disappointed that it does happen. But I know that we are very committed as an organization, Portsmouth Music and Arts Center is very committed as an organization to accessibility, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And it's my understanding from the work that I've done with all the other organizations that are involved in this group that we're all in that boat together and really working to further that work within our community, within our state, within our country, and throughout the world. So I'm glad you brought it up, Courtney, and I think that more people in the community need to be aware that things like this are happening. Go ahead, Margaret.
And in no way as serious or as important as that topic, but I also wanted to mention, because I've been getting questioned about it. You might have seen this in the paper. Dover installed a bunch of ice sculptures all over their downtown for the holidays, and they didn't even make it overnight last week, and they were destroyed. And we are still planning to do an installation in front of North Church for first night, and unfortunately that behavior isn't uncommon, and it's happened to us in the past where they don't even survive the night of the 31st. But you know, I wanted to let this group know that as well, that we're going to move ahead with things for first night, and that also includes fireworks at 8 in the evening over the South Mill Pond.
Thanks, Barbara. Yeah, I'm glad that's happening again this year. Any other comments or questions for the Stephanie, do you still want to go?
Yeah, sorry to have my hand up before. Practical question, when do you want me to post your report onto the page, this group's page on the website? Do you want it now, or do you want to wait until after?
I don't see any problem with posting it right away.
Yeah, it was
Well, it's in the packet, so.
Yeah, it's in the packet. So yeah, go ahead and post that.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Well, without anything further, thank you so much for your service this year. Barbara and I will be in touch as we know what's going on into 2022, but we wish you all a wonderful, happy new year and hope to see you all very soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy
Merry Christmas.
holidays. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Bye, everybody.